Hey, mamas, and welcome back to the Mental Breakdown, a short and intentional space where we unpack one mental health topic a week that impacts our community. I'm your host, Autumn Cologne, founder of So Well, counselor in training, maternal mental health advocate, and someone who lives with PMDD. This week's episode is called More Than Hormones because PMDD is not just about mood swings or PMS or a bad period. It is a severe cyclical mood disorder, and it's time we stop brushing it off and talk about it. So, what is PMDD? PMDD, or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is a hormone-related cyclical mood disorder that affects about 1 in 20 people who menstruate. It shows up in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, that is the 2 weeks between ovulation and menstruation or your period. And it causes intense emotional and physical symptoms that can make daily life feel literally impossible. And unlike PMS, these symptoms can disrupt work, relationship, self esteem, and even safety. So, to understand PMDD just a little bit more, I want to note that PMDD is a severe negative reaction in the brain that is directly connected to the body's natural hormone fluctuations of the menstrual cycle, and it is not a hormone imbalance. Many people often confuse it with such, and I want to make sure that we bring awareness and sensitivity to the topic that it is the body's natural reaction to these fluctuations. And the reason that this happens have not yet been fully understand or it hasn't come up in research as much. Researchers, however, have established that this extreme brain response is triggered by estrogen progesterone's natural rise and fall. So while PMDD is directly connected to the menstrual cycle, again, it is not a hormonal imbalance, and it's important to recognize and address the symptoms effectively. So let's back up a little bit and just kind of reestablish that the symptoms of PMDD go beyond PMS. PMDD for menstruating individuals can feel different, and it is vast and it is a large list of symptoms, but the severity of the symptoms is what kind of helps establish whether or not you're dealing with PMDD. For those living with PMDD, some of the symptoms include things like irritability, depression, anxiety, brain fog, fatigue, insomnia. There's even some uncommon ones, but notable within the community, with things such as mutism, rage, crying spells, paranoia, sleeping too much, sleeping too little, um, not being able to get out of bed. Cyclical absences from work and school. So paying attention to are you calling out a little bit more during these times? Anxiety and panic attacks, lack of concentration. So I mean, the list is pretty expansive when it comes to PMDD, which is why I said it's important to kind of look at the severity of these symptoms and when they are actually occurring. So PMDD can also, one thing to note, lead to suicidal thoughts and behaviors. This is something that's not often talked about, but studies have shown that up to 34% of those with PMDD have reported past suicide attempts. Right? PMDD doesn't cause heavy periods, cramps, or period pain, though symptoms such as cramping, bloating, and tenderness are common. So it's important to know also, like I mentioned before, that in order to receive a diagnosis of PMDD, it must occur within the luteal phase. So according to the DSM-5, these symptoms must appear during the luteal phase and resolve within a few days of your menstruation starts. So that means, it's happening about 2 weeks before your period begins. And then once your period begins, the symptoms will subside or you start to feel better. And these symptoms must also last for at least 2 consecutive cycles in order to receive a diagnosis. Now, when we get into diagnosis, when we're talking about Black and Brown women, because that's what we do at the So Well podcast, PMDD is underdiagnosed, especially in Black and Brown women. PMDD is often misdiagnosed with things such as depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or other mood disorders before anyone connects the dots between mood and cycle. And that's on top of the fact that our pain and our culture is often minimized. We're told things like, it's just PMS, this is what happens when you're a woman, maybe you're stressed, or the worst, you need to calm down. But PMDD is a neurological condition driven by how our brain responds to hormonal changes, and we deserve care and we deserve to be heard and supported in our experiences. All right, so now let's talk about PMDD and motherhood, because like all of these mental health disorders that we've been breaking down, they do not stop from motherhood. Okay, they keep going. They rear their heads. You still have to live with them. And so PMDD and motherhood can look like trying to keep up with routines but not being able to concentrate, managing tantrums and logistics but not being able to get out of the bed, all while feeling emotionally unrecognizable, exhausted, and even disassociated. I'll give you a little anecdote here. My PMDD, oftentimes in the past, I used to call it my Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because I would wake up one day and just feel completely unlike myself, but still needed to show up as mom and wife, and still needed to be on Zoom calls, and still need to meet with clients. And so I have learned for myself to live according to my cycle, which is what we'll get into. But PMDD does not stop for motherhood. The guilt, the shame, the internal rage is not talked about, it's not shared. And I'm here to tell you that if you are living with PMDD, you are not alone. There is support out there. It's possible for you to live with this and be happy and be healthy. And it's not going to look the same for each and every one of us, which is the thing that sucks, right? PMDD looks different. It'll look different for me and it'll look different for you, but naming it and normalizing it is the important first step. And knowing also that you are not weak, you are not failing, and this is not your fault. Whew, I needed to hear that. All right, so how is PMDD diagnosed? We talked about it being diagnosed, about the symptoms that occur during PMDD and during the luteal phase. But I also want you to know that when you go to your doctor, you're not like, hey, give me the blood test to see if I got PMDD. That is not what's happening here. PMDD is diagnosed based on cycle tracking, and a doctor will ask you to track your symptoms daily for at least 2 full cycles. And you can use tools like a handy dandy notebook, right, or agenda or calendar. But there are also tools called the Me versus PMDD, the Flow app. There's also the one that clinicians use, which is the DRSP. I will list all of these in the show notes, so you don't got to write them down, but it's important to know that you must be tracking your symptoms every single day in order to bring them to your doctor to get a diagnosis. The symptoms must only appear during the luteal phase. They must disappear a few days after menstruation starts, and they must be severe enough to impact daily functioning. So your doctor, your clinician is going to be looking for those things when you're going to ask about diagnosis. So please go prepared and take care of yourself by being self-aware of your symptoms and tracking them yourself before you go into that appointment. But even if you don't even know how to do that, just bringing it up to your doctor so they can help you get started is that's enough too. So do that. There is no single solution. I mentioned earlier that PMDD looks different for you. It'll look different for your friend. It'll look different for your sister. It will look different. And there's no simple single solution, but it is treatable. You can live with it. You can experience joy with PMDD. And some of those treatments may include things like SSRIs. So that would be medication, right? Hormonal birth control to suppress ovulation. So I've read studies and I've heard anecdotes from people that that isn't something that has worked for them. There's also CBT therapy or other kinds of talk therapy, anti-inflammatory diets and lifestyles. And then there's also the PMDD focused peer support with organizations like IMPD Global. They are an amazing organization doing lots of great research and work and support, peer support for menstruating folks who need support with PMDD. And then, like I mentioned earlier, for me, it has been a lifestyle change. And what that looks like is living according to your cycle. And for me, that means if I know that I'm in my luteal phase, that means taking things a little bit easier. That means ordering dinner out. That means not taking appointments. That means not going to the gym or running 6 miles if that's what my body what my body needs for that moment. And that may look like doing a little bit more during the other phases of my life. So the other 2 weeks that I have during the month, I may be a little bit more active. That way I allow my body to rest fully and take care of myself during my luteal phase. Caring for yourself, it's going to look different. I mentioned earlier that the symptoms, there's a long list, but starting with self-screening is really, really important. IMPD Global, they have a self-screening tool, which is, not to replace getting evaluated by a healthcare provider, but it's a really great tool to get started with, to track your symptoms. And if you think that you have PMDD, just know that many people live undiagnosed with PMDD for years. But like I said, naming it can bring relief, but it can also bring uncertainty. It's a learning curve, but knowing and naming is one of the most important things, because once you know a thing, you're able to potentially get control of it, because once you know a thing, you're able to understand, research, and be more aware of your symptoms. And so, with that, I want to now bring you into our grounding practice of the week, and it's called Name and Normalize. To do this exercise, you're going to want to just sit where you are or stand where you are. If you're driving or exercising or not in a place to sit down, not in a place to do this exercise, please take a pause and come back to this later. But the first thing you're going to do is place your hand on your chest and take a deep breath and repeat after me. This is my body's response to a cycle. This is not all of me. And now you will repeat that as needed. Whenever you're in your cycle, you're in your luteal phase, you're not feeling that great, just take a moment to pause. Put your hand on your body and connect with yourself. Connect with yourself and tell yourself that this is just your body's response. It's not all of who you are. Take that deep breath so you can just pause and just be in the moment. The goal of this exercise is not to fix your feelings, but it's also to witness them, and to witness them without shame, to name them without shame, to normalize them because they are there. That is what this is for. Every episode, I like to close you out with an affirmation, and I wanted to have this affirmation this week be specific to PMDD because it is my lived experience. And if you feel like you're crashing out every month, if you've ever said, oh my God, like I'm struggling, but then your period come and you're like, oh my God, I'm happy, I'm free, I'm chilling. You're not alone. You might have PMDD, you might not. But if you are feeling that way, you deserve care that believes, validates, and supports who you are. And so the affirmation for this week is, I honor my cycle. I trust my symptoms, I trust myself, and I deserve care that believes in me. Thank you for joining me on the Mental Breakdown. Until next time, take care of your mind. I hope you heal well, and I'll see you next time on the So Well podcast. Bye. The So Well podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and the content shared here is based on personal experiences and research, and it should not be taken as medical or therapeutic advice. Please consult a qualified professional for any mental health or medical concerns.